There are a few new words you might need in your vocabulary to get a handle on what Auckland-based company Kiwa Digital is all about. The first is wahinepreneur, and as CEO Steve Renata explains, the wahinepreneur at the very beginning of the Kiwa story is founder Rhonda Kite.
The origins of Kiwa come from our founder, a wahinepreneur, Rhonda Kite, who hails from the far north, Taitokoro region. She came into the dubbing side of the post-production industry back in the early 2000s. Spent lots of times in studios going through the dubbing process, which is taking film and TV content from one language to the other. And through what was then a very manual and tedious process, figured out a way to digitise and create one of the world's first pieces of software that allowed the dubbing process to become really efficient and high quality.
That was 2003, and the language dubbing software VoiceQ pretty much revolutionised the process of overdubbing content in different languages. It's now used in hundreds of studios around the world and is in demand by platforms like Netflix, wanting to make all sorts of content accessible to audiences in other languages. The next new word is transadapting. It's a little translating, a little adapting, and a lot of art form.
Essentially in dubbing, what you're doing is you're taking audio files, video files and text files and matching those up from one language to another. Now, the translation, if you like, of one text from one language to the other is not so complicated. The issue you've got with dubbing is that it has to occur within a time frame. So a line starts at t=0 and finishes at, say, t=5 in language A. When you then translate that into language B, it has to fit within the time frame. And as you probably appreciate, in different languages, the translation can either be a little bit shorter or a little bit longer. And so what you end up getting into is what we call transadapting. So a good translator will understand the time code, look at it and go, I'm going to translate this so it's similar, but it's not a direct translation, so it fits not only the time code, but also the lip movements. So there's a little bit of art form involved, and you can imagine before there was digital software, that was an incredibly manual, tedious and slow process.
Fast forward to 2018, and Kiwa is now at the forefront of experiential digital education with a new publishing program called CutPro. The CutPro software takes text, audio, animated imagery and videos, turns them into interactive books and packages them as apps for tablets and smartphones. Think of a traditional paper and ink book, but on steroids.
If we deconstruct a typical hard copy great book, what you've got is text and you've got imagery on some type of paper type film, whatever it is. What we do when we're creating a digital book is we have text, but then we can also have the audio that replicates the text of the story in any language. Then we can also have imagery like a book, but we can animate the imagery so the imagery can move, and we have things like augmented reality right now that take those images from a one-dimensional thing and create three-dimensional. And then you can also have videos. So we call those the assets of a book, of a digital book: text, audio, imagery and videos. And what we have is a software application that allows us to take all of those assets and author them into a digital interactive book app.
Renata acknowledges that while the idea of CutPro was born from a desire to introduce and support greater use of te reo Māori, there's now a much bigger goal, and that's to promote literacy on a global scale.
The proprietary part of what Kiwa does with these digital book apps is based on what's called the neurological impress method. Now, this is a shared reading technique. If you think of the scenario of yourself as the caregiver and a child or a relative, you're reading together. The caregiver has their finger on the text and runs their finger along the text, and you try to speak together. The caregiver, slightly louder and maybe just a fraction faster than the child. Now, this particular methodology has been researched and proven to accelerate children's oracy levels very quickly over a 12-week period. What we've done with this digitally is mimic that process. So now what happens when you run your finger across the text of the app, it speaks to you in the language that you've chosen. If you tap on a word, it says the word in the language. And if you double tap it, it phonetically spells it for you. So that interactivity that we've got in there is incredibly powerful to increase literacy of any age, but also in any language.
While CutPro is undeniably a tool of global relevance, the growing aspiration of organisations here at home to better represent and involve themselves in things Māori has meant a raft of inquiries, from Air New Zealand and Fonterra to the local high school, all wanting digital tools to help them develop their capacity in the Māori language. A couple of years ago, Kiwa developed an award-winning Māori language app, Te Kete Tikanga Māori, for Air New Zealand to roll out to their staff. Renata said it was part of what, for him, has been a humbling experience as organisations and individuals embrace what he calls a cultural renaissance and the process of working out how to become one by recognising each other's differences.
I think from a digital perspective, from a technology perspective, what we're also seeing is the influence of the millennials. That generation that are coming through that are digital natives, and they're looking at the world through a different filter than I did as a Gen Xer, and the baby boomers going, hey, I think you guys might not have got this quite right. And they're picking up information very quickly. They're more culturally sensitive to what is the right way to behave and what is the wrong way to behave. And so all of these things have attributed to the interest, I think, and probably from an education perspective, from a Kiwa and a personal perspective, is creating curiosity. When you've got curiosity, it means people have dropped their filters. The unconscious bias is gone, and I'm really curious to know, what is that word? How do I say that word? What does it mean? How do I feel when I say it? Why should I say it? When should I say it? And so forth. And then you're on that wonderful journey of cultural intelligence.
Kiwa is now at a point where CutPro is ready to be licensed, with a view to training other organisations, both here and overseas, to be self-sustaining and create their own apps. The next move for Kiwa is to connect with Indigenous organisations and governments around the world to show off their wares.
For us, we have a very, very deep respect of Indigenous cultures and languages. And so, yes, of course, we're happy to do production work for you, but what we'd really like to do is help you become self-sustaining with the software and you creating your own apps with your own people, because it's all about jobs, in the nation of where you're working.
Kiwa's wahinepreneur Kite has recently returned from exploring opportunities in the United Arab Emirates, and Renata is off to Ireland shortly to talk to the government about producing digital books in Gaelic. If there was ever any doubt, Kiwa is now well and truly living large on a global digital stage.
Once you create software, you're digital from the moment you push play. So whether you've built an app for Air New Zealand, I mean that's circulated in 13,000 staff in as many countries as they fly to, and the same with licensing the software. So you very quickly go global with the decision to go global. It's really up to you, and obviously having an interested customer at the other end. But that's the joy, is you're out of the bricks and mortar model. I've got my building here, which is what I do, and my front of office and so forth. With us, you're in the cloud every day of the week.